Poor girl saves millionaire from burning Mustang. At hospital, she discovers he's her real father. Before we dive in, let's light up this comment section with hearts from every corner of the world. The morning sun painted golden streaks across Highway 41, where 7-year-old Lucy Carter knelt beside their weathered roadside stand, carefully arranging mason jars of homemade strawberry jam. Her small fingers worked with the precision of someone far beyond her years, each jar positioned, just so to catch the light. "Lucy, honey, don't forget the price tags," called her grandmother Mabel from the cottage porch, her voice carrying the gentle authority that had shaped Lucy's confident spirit. "Already done, Grandma," Lucy chirped back, her dark curls bouncing as she stood to admire her handiwork. At 7 years old, Lucy possessed an unusual self-assurance that made adults do double takes. While other children might shy away from strangers, Lucy would look customers directly in the eye, her bright smile convincing them to buy an extra jar or two. The cottage behind them was modest, just 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smelled perpetually of cinnamon and vanilla, and a living room where Mabel's pension checks stretched to cover their simple needs. But Lucy had never known want. Not really. Mabel had made sure of that, filling their small world with love, laughter, and the unwavering belief that Lucy could accomplish anything. "Tell me again why Mama isn't here," Lucy said, settling beside her grandmother on the porch steps as the morning rush of commuters thinned. Mabel's weathered hands paused in their knitting. This conversation came regularly, like clockwork, and each time her heart ached a little more. "Your Mama Rebecca was the most beautiful soul I ever knew, sweetheart. She loved you so much that she gave her life bringing you into this world. Sometimes angels are needed in heaven more than on earth." Lucy nodded solemnly, then brightened. "But she left me with you, and you're teaching me to be strong like her, right?" "That's right, baby girl. Strong and kind and brave." As if to prove the point, Lucy hopped up and began collecting bottle caps that had blown from passing cars onto their patch of grass. Her collection had grown to hundreds, every color imaginable, each one cleaned and sorted with meticulous care. She arranged them into elaborate patterns she called treasure maps, convinced they would someday lead her to something magical. "This red one's my favorite," she announced, holding up a crimson bottle cap that caught the afternoon light like a ruby. "It's going to be the most important one of all." Mabel smiled, though something flickered behind her eyes. A shadow Lucy was too young to recognize as worry. "I'm sure it will be, honey. I'm sure it will be." As the day wound down and they packed up their unsold jars, neither of them could have imagined that tomorrow would bring a twist of fate that would change everything. That Lucy's brave heart and that special red bottle cap would soon collide with destiny in the most unexpected way. The next afternoon, Lucy was arranging her bottle caps in a new pattern near the roadside when the screech of tires shattered the peaceful quiet. A sleek black Mustang swerved violently, its driver fighting to avoid a deer that had darted across Highway 41. Time seemed to slow as Lucy watched the car careen off the asphalt, slam into the massive oak tree at the edge of their property, and crumple like a tin can. Steam hissed from the crushed hood, followed by the ominous orange glow of flames. "Grandma!" Lucy screamed, but she was already running toward the wreckage. Inside the twisted metal, a man in a business suit hung unconscious against his seatbelt, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. The flames were spreading quickly, licking at the engine compartment with hungry tongues. Mister, wake up!" Lucy pounded on the driver's side window, but it wouldn't budge. The door was jammed, tight. Panic could have frozen her, but Lucy's mind worked with crystal clarity. She spotted a jagged rock near the tree and grabbed it with both hands. The passenger window exploded inward as she struck it, safety glass showering everywhere. Without hesitation, Lucy climbed halfway through the opening. "Mister, you have to wake up." She shook the man's shoulder hard. His eyes fluttered open, dazed and confused. "The car's on fire. We have to get out now." Lucy's voice cut through his fog, something in her tone, the absolute certainty of a child who wouldn't accept defeat, snapped him to awareness. Together they struggled as he unbuckled his seatbelt and Lucy guided him toward the passenger side. The heat was becoming unbearable, smoke filling their lungs. With Lucy pulling and the man pushing, they tumbled out of the car just as Mabel arrived with the cordless phone pressed to her ear. This is 911. What's your emergency? They had barely crawled 20 feet when the Mustang exploded behind them, the force knocking them flat. Lucy's ears rang, but she immediately turned to check on the stranger who lay gasping beside her. "You're going to be okay," she said, with the same confidence she used when selling jam. "Help is coming." As sirens wailed in the distance, Lucy reached into her pocket and pulled out her precious red bottle cap, the one she'd called the most important of all. Without a word, she slipped it into the man's suit jacket pocket. "For luck," she whispered, just as the paramedics arrived. 3 days. After the accident, life at the cottage had seemingly returned to normal. Lucy arranged her remaining bottle caps, minus the precious red one, while Mabel tended to their jam stand. But normalcy was an illusion that couldn't hide the subtle changes creeping into their routine. "Did you really save someone from a burning car?" asked Tommy Henderson, Lucy's classmate, his voice dripping with skepticism during recess. "Of course I did," Lucy replied matter-of-factly, swinging higher on the playground swing. "The car exploded right after we got out. It was like in the movies, but louder." "No way a little kid could do that," scoffed Sarah Martinez. "You're just making stuff up." Lucy shrugged, unbothered by their disbelief. She knew what had happened, and that was enough. Truth didn't need validation from children who thought courage only came in adult-sized packages. At home, however, Lucy noticed things that worried her young mind. Mabel moved slower than usual, pausing to catch her breath after simple tasks. The prescription bottles in the kitchen cabinet had multiplied, and Lucy often caught her grandmother taking special medicine when she thought no one was watching. "Grandma, are you feeling okay?" Lucy asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. "Just a little tired, sweetheart. These old bones aren't what they used to be." Mabel's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Later that night, Lucy padded quietly to the kitchen for a glass of water and found her grandmother sitting at the worn wooden table, staring at an old photograph. The image showed a young woman with Lucy's dark curls and bright eyes, standing beside a handsome man in a graduation cap and gown. "Who's that man with Mama?" Lucy asked softly. Mabel startled, quickly sliding the photo beneath other papers. "Just an old friend from college, honey. Nothing important." But Lucy had seen something flicker across her grandmother's face. Recognition, perhaps, or maybe regret. The man in the photograph had kind eyes and a familiar smile, though Lucy couldn't place where she might have seen it before. "Mama looks happy," Lucy observed. "She was," Mabel whispered, her voice carrying the weight of secrets. She was very happy then. As Lucy climbed back into bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that the photograph held answers to questions she didn't yet know how to ask. At Chicago General Hospital, Jack Miller stared at the ceiling of his private room, fragments of memory drifting through his mind like puzzle pieces. The doctors said he'd suffered a concussion, but his recollections of the accident remained frustratingly hazy, except for one crystal-clear image, a small girl with determined dark eyes, pulling him to safety. "Mr. Miller?" Dr. Patricia Hoffman entered with a clipboard, her expression unusually serious. "We need to discuss something unexpected that came up during your treatment." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "Is there a problem with my recovery?" "No, nothing like that. As part of our regional genetic study, we analyzed your blood sample. The database flagged an interesting match." Dr. Hoffman paused, choosing her words carefully. "There's a strong genetic correlation with another participant, a 7-year-old girl named Lucy Carter." The name hit Jack like a physical blow. "Lucy Carter? The girl who saved me? You know her?" Jack's mind raced. He'd been trying to find the brave little girl to thank her properly, but the name Carter had meant nothing to him. What kind of correlation are we talking about? The kind that suggests a familial relationship, specifically parent and child. The room seemed to tilt. Jack gripped the bed rails, his knuckles white. "That's impossible. I don't have any children, Doctor." Hoffman consulted her notes. "According to our records, Lucy's mother was Rebecca Carter, maiden name Thompson. She died in childbirth 7 years ago. Rebecca Thompson. The name exploded through Jack's consciousness like a lightning strike. Beautiful, brilliant Rebecca with her infectious laugh and dreams of changing the world. They'd been inseparable, through college, planning a future together until she disappeared after graduation without explanation, leaving only a brief note saying she needed to find her own path. "Mr. Miller, are you all right?" Jack's hands trembled as the pieces fell into place. Rebecca had been pregnant. She'd carried his child and never told him. The brave little girl who'd risked her life to save a stranger was his daughter who'd grown up thinking she had no father. "I need to see the test results," Jack whispered. "Of course. But Mr. Miller, there's something else you should know. The child's guardian, Mabel Carter, has been receiving treatment here for advanced stage pancreatic cancer. Her prognosis is—" Dr. Hoffman's voice trailed off meaningfully. Jack closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the cosmic irony. His daughter, a daughter he never knew existed, had saved his life, and now fate was presenting him with the chance to save hers before it was too late. Jack's discharge from the hospital felt surreal. Within hours of learning about Lucy, his trusted assistant Marcus had transformed from scheduling meetings to conducting the most important investigation of Jack's life. "The records are all here," Marcus said, spreading documents across Jack's downtown office desk. Rebecca Carter, formerly Thompson, died from complications during childbirth at St. Mary's Hospital. No father listed on the birth certificate. The child has been raised entirely by her maternal grandmother. Jack studied Lucy's school photograph with trembling hands. The resemblance was undeniable. She had his determined jawline, Rebecca's expressive eyes, and a combination of their features that created something uniquely beautiful. "What about the grandmother's condition?" Jack asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Terminal. The doctors give her 3 to 6 months, possibly less." Marcus's voice was gentle. "She's been hiding it well, according to the neighbors. Still running that little roadside stand, still caring for Lucy like nothing's wrong." Jack stood at his office window, staring down at the bustling Chicago streets 42 floors below. A week ago, his biggest concern had been closing the Henderson merger. Now he was grappling with the existence of a daughter he'd never known and the approaching loss of the only parent she'd ever known. Why didn't Rebecca tell me? The question that had tormented him since Dr. Hoffman's revelation burst out. "We talked about everything. Marriage, children, our future." "Maybe she thought you weren't ready," Marcus suggested carefully. "You were pretty focused on building the company back then. 90-hour weeks, constant travel." The words stung because they held truth. At 25, Jack had been consumed by ambition, determined to prove himself in his father's investment firm. He'd loved Rebecca deeply, but had he shown her that she and their future family would come first? "I need to meet with the grandmother before approaching Lucy," Jack decided. "If Mabel Carter has been protecting my daughter for 7 years, she deserves explanations, not surprises." Marcus nodded. "I'll arrange it discreetly, but, Jack, are you prepared for what this means? Taking custody of a 7-year-old will change everything about your life." Jack touched the red bottle cap he'd found in his suit jacket. Lucy's gift of luck that had somehow brought them together. "Marcus, that little girl saved my life without knowing who I was. Maybe it's time I returned the favor." Jack's hands shook as he knocked on the cottage door. Through the window, he could see Mabel Carter moving slowly toward the entrance, her frail frame betraying the illness she'd hidden so well. "Mr. Miller." Her voice held no surprise, only resignation. "I wondered when you'd come." "You knew who I was during the accident?" Mabel stepped aside, gesturing him into the modest living room. "Rebecca kept your picture. You haven't changed much." Her eyes held decades of carefully guarded secrets. "She made me promise only to contact you if something happened to me, and Lucy had nowhere else to go." "Why didn't she tell me herself?" The question tore from Jack's throat. She was scared. Mabel settled heavily into her worn armchair. "Rebecca saw how consumed you were with building your empire. She convinced herself that a baby would be an inconvenience, something that would make you resent her eventually." Jack sank onto the small, sofa surrounded by evidence of Lucy's life, her artwork taped to the refrigerator, bottle caps arranged in careful patterns on the coffee table, the lingering scent of homemade jam. She was wrong, he whispered. I know that now. Mabel's smile was sad but genuine. The way you've been searching for Lucy since the accident, the concern in your voice when you called. Rebecca would have seen it too, given time. How long do you have? Weeks, maybe a month if I'm lucky. Mabel's matter-of-fact tone couldn't mask the pain beneath. I've been trying to prepare Lucy without frightening her, but 7-year-olds shouldn't have to face losing their whole world. The front door burst open, and Lucy's voice filled the cottage. Grandma, I'm home. Mrs. Peterson gave me extra apples. She stopped short, staring at Jack with wide eyes. It's you, the man from the car. Lucy's face lit up with genuine joy. Are you all better now? Did my lucky bottle cap help? Jack's throat constricted. Yes, sweetheart. It helped very much. Lucy, Mr. Miller brought you something, Mabel said gently. Jack produced the art set Marcus had suggested, watercolors, brushes, and pristine white paper. Lucy's eyes grew round with wonder. This is for me? Really? She immediately began examining each item with the reverence of someone who'd never owned anything so fine. I heard you like to draw, Jack managed. I love to draw. Want to see my bottle cap collection? And my treasure maps? Without waiting for an answer, Lucy grabbed his hand, her small fingers warm and trusting. As she led him to her carefully organized collection, chattering about each piece's significance, Jack felt something fundamental shift in his chest. This wasn't just duty or responsibility. This was love, instant and overwhelming for the brave little girl who'd already changed his life in ways he was only beginning to understand. Over the following weeks, Jack became a fixture at the cottage. He'd arrive after work with groceries, help Lucy with homework, and sit quietly with Mabel during her increasingly difficult days. The pretense that he was simply a grateful accident victim had naturally evolved into something deeper. A family, forming under the shadow of impending loss. Lucy had grown comfortable with Jack's presence, showing him her latest drawings and teaching him her grandmother's jam recipes with the seriousness of passing down ancient wisdom, but she remained unaware of the profound truth that connected them. She trusts you completely, Mabel observed, one evening as they watched Lucy arrange her bottle caps on the porch. Her voice had grown weaker, each word requiring effort. She's remarkable, Jack replied, marveling at how Lucy hummed contentedly despite the upheaval surrounding her. How do we tell her? Soon. She needs to understand before. Mabel's sentence trailed off, but both knew its conclusion. The moment came 3 days later when Mabel collapsed while preparing breakfast. After a frightening rush to the hospital, doctors confirmed what they'd all dreaded. Her time was measured in days, not weeks. That evening, sitting in the cottage living room, with Lucy curled between them on the couch, Mabel took her granddaughter's small hands. Sweetheart, you know how I've been feeling tired lately. Lucy nodded, suddenly serious. You've been taking more medicine. I'm very sick, honey. So sick that the doctors can't make me better. Mabel's voice remained steady despite the tears in her eyes. And that means you'll need someone else to take care of you. Lucy's grip tightened. But I want to stay with you. I know, baby girl. But remember how we always talked about how strong and brave you are? Mabel glanced at Jack, who nodded encouragingly. Mr. Miller isn't just our friend. He's your daddy, Lucy. Your real daddy. The silence stretched endlessly. Lucy looked between them, processing this revelation with the same careful consideration she gave her bottle cap arrangements. My daddy? She whispered. Yes, Jack said softly. I didn't know about you before, but now that I do, I want to take care of you, if that's okay with you. Lucy studied his face intently. Will you teach me to drive when I'm older and help me with math homework and make sure I eat vegetables even when I don't want to? Every single thing, Jack promised, his voice thick with emotion. Lucy nodded solemnly. Okay. But can I bring my bottle caps and Grandma's recipes? Everything that's important to you comes with us, Jack assured her. As Mabel drifted off to sleep that night, Lucy whispered to Jack, "I'm scared, but I'm ready for our new chapter. Grandma taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what needs to be done anyway." 2 weeks after Mabel's funeral, a small, dignified service where Lucy had stood with quiet composure, clutching her grandmother's favorite shawl, Jack's penthouse elevator climbed toward a new beginning. Lucy pressed her face against the glass walls, watching Chicago shrink below them. "Are we really going to live in the clouds?" she asked, her voice small in the vast elevator. "Just about," Jack smiled, though his stomach churned with nerves. Social services had approved his custody petition, but paperwork couldn't prepare him for the reality of becoming an instant father. The elevator opened to reveal 42 floors of luxury that made Lucy's eyes widen. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline, while marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Everything was pristine, expensive, and utterly foreign to a little girl who'd spent her life in a 2-bedroom cottage. "Senor Miller, and this must be Lucy." Mrs. Rivera, Jack's longtime housekeeper, emerged from the kitchen with flour-dusted hands and a warm smile. "I've been preparing all morning for your arrival, mija." Lucy instinctively moved closer to Jack, overwhelmed by the grandeur surrounding her. "I prepared a special room just for you," Jack said, leading her down a hallway lined with abstract art. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom decorated in soft blues and yellows, with a window seat overlooking the lake and a specially built shelf for her bottle cap collection. "This is all mine?" Lucy whispered, stepping carefully across the plush carpet as if afraid to disturb something. "Every bit of it." Jack knelt beside her. "Your bottle caps can go right here on this shelf, and there's space for all your art supplies." Lucy nodded but remained quiet, setting down the small suitcase that contained her few possessions. She arranged her bottle caps methodically, recreating the familiar patterns that had comforted her at the cottage. As she worked, Jack noticed her hands trembling slightly. That night, after Mrs. Rivera had served a dinner that Lucy barely touched, Jack helped her settle into her new room. She wore her grandmother's shawl over her pajamas and held it close as she climbed into the enormous bed. "Good night, Lucy," Jack said softly from the doorway. "Good night, Daddy." The word hung in the air, tentative but genuine. Jack closed the door and stood in the hallway listening. Soon, soft crying filtered through the walls, the sound of a brave little girl finally allowing herself to grieve in private. Jack sat on the floor outside her door, his back against the wall. He couldn't take away her pain, but he could be near. Inside, Lucy eventually fell asleep clutching Mabel's shawl, her bottle caps arranged on the nightstand like tiny sentinels watching over her dreams. The first month of their new life together unfolded like a careful dance between two people learning each other's rhythms. Jack had rearranged his entire world, scaling back his work hours, attending parenting classes that made him feel like a bewildered student, and consulting child psychologists who assured him that adjustment took time. "I got lost again," Lucy announced one morning, emerging from what Jack had thought was the bathroom. "This place is like a maze." She'd somehow ended up in his home office, surrounded by financial reports and the serious leather furniture that suddenly seemed intimidating, rather than impressive. Jack found her sitting in his executive chair, spinning slowly while studying the city view. "Maybe we need a map," Jack suggested, remembering her love of creating treasure maps with her bottle caps. Lucy's face brightened. "Can we make one together?" They spent the afternoon creating a whimsical floor plan, with Lucy drawing little pictures to mark each room: a tiny bed for her bedroom, a stack of books for the library, a chef's hat for the kitchen where Mrs. Rivera worked her magic. "What's this room for?" Lucy asked, pointing to Jack's rarely used formal dining room. "Fancy dinners, I suppose. Can we eat breakfast there tomorrow? It looks lonely." Jack realized that in 7 years of living in the penthouse, he'd never once considered whether rooms could feel lonely. "Of course we can." Lucy insisted on helping Mrs. Rivera with household tasks, despite both adults' protests. She'd stand on a step stool to wash dishes, her small hands careful with the expensive china, chattering about her day at her new school. "The kids are different here," she confided to Jack one evening as they worked on homework at the kitchen island. "They talk about things I don't understand, horse riding lessons and vacation houses." "Are they unkind to you?" "Not mean, exactly. Just, we don't have the same words." Lucy concentrated on her math problems, then looked up. "But I taught Maria about bottle cap treasure maps at recess. She thought they were neat." Jack marveled at her resilience. Where another child might have been overwhelmed by the social differences, Lucy simply adapted, finding connections wherever possible. Their bedtime routine had evolved into something sacred. Lucy would show Jack her daily artwork, usually scenes, from her memories of the cottage or new observations about her penthouse life. He'd learned to look closely, understanding that her drawings were how she processed the enormous changes in her world. "This one's us," she said one night, holding up a picture of two stick figures holding hands in front of a tall building. "We look happy." Jack studied the drawing, noticing that she'd given both figures the same smile. "We do look happy. Are we happy?" Lucy considered this seriously. "I miss Grandma every day, but I'm glad you're my daddy. Is that okay?" "That's more than okay," Jack whispered, tucking the drawing carefully into the growing collection he kept in his desk drawer. "That's perfect." Lucy's artwork had evolved from simple crayon drawings to complex watercolor scenes that took Jack's breath away. The art tutor he'd hired, Ms. Chen, emerged from their first session shaking her head in amazement. "Mr. Miller, I've taught children for 20 years, but Lucy's natural talent is extraordinary. She doesn't just draw what she sees, she captures emotion." Jack studied Lucy's latest creation, a painting of their cottage with Mabel tending the jam stand. But somehow the entire scene glowed with warmth and love that transcended mere representation. "She's processing her grief through art," Ms. Chen explained quietly. "Look at this series. The paintings told Lucy's story, the cottage, the accident, the hospital, their first meeting, and finally, scenes of the penthouse with both joy and uncertainty swirling in the brushstrokes." Jack had them professionally framed and displayed throughout the penthouse, replacing his sterile abstract pieces with Lucy's vibrant emotional landscapes. The transformation was remarkable. The cold, impersonal space suddenly felt like a home. But the real test came during Lucy's first major meltdown. She woke screaming at 2 a.m., calling for Mabel through tears that seemed to come from her very soul. Jack found her curled in her closet, hyperventilating and inconsolable. "Grandma! I want Grandma! Where is she? Where did she go?" Jack's parenting classes hadn't prepared him for this raw display of grief. His instinct was to fix it, to make promises that would stop her tears. Instead, he remembered Ms. Chen's advice about allowing Lucy to process emotions naturally. "I know, sweetheart. I know you miss her." He sat on the closet floor beside her, not trying to pull her out or make her stop crying. "Grandma loved you so much. I dreamed she was making jam, but then she disappeared and I couldn't find her anywhere." Jack reached for Lucy's art supplies, setting them gently beside her. "Can you show me what the dream looked like?" Through her tears, Lucy began to paint. The image that emerged was haunting, a cottage fading into mist while a small figure reached desperately toward it. But as she worked, her breathing steadied, the violent sobs turning to quiet sniffles. "She's not really gone, is she?" Lucy whispered when the painting was finished. "I mean, I can't see her, but she's still here." She pressed her hand to her heart. "She'll always be here," Jack confirmed, his own voice thick with emotion. "And in your art, and in the recipes she taught you, and in how brave and kind you are." Lucy leaned against him, exhausted but calmer. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" "I'll stay as long as you need me to." As Lucy drifted off, still holding her paintbrush, Jack realized something profound had shifted between them. He wasn't just her guardian anymore. He was truly her father, the person she turned to when her world felt uncertain. The realization filled him with both fierce protectiveness and humble gratitude. The legal proceedings for Lucy's permanent adoption moved forward with bureaucratic precision, but the emotional adoption had already taken place in moments too small for courtrooms to measure. Jack found himself treasuring Lucy's sleepy, "Good morning, Daddy," and the way she automatically reached for his hand when crossing busy streets. "Bring your daughter to work day?" Marcus suggested one Thursday morning, noticing Jack's reluctance to leave for an important client meeting. "She has school," Jack protested, though the idea appealed to him more than he'd admit. "It's a teacher planning day. Lucy told Mrs. Rivera yesterday." Marcus grinned. "You're not the only one who pays attention to her schedule." An hour later, Lucy sat in Jack's executive conference room, quietly working on homework while Jack conducted his meeting. She'd promised to be invisible, but her presence transformed the atmosphere entirely. His usually ruthless business associates found themselves smiling at her polite, "Excuse me," when she needed to sharpen her pencil. "That's your daughter?" asked Harrison Webb, one of Jack's toughest competitors, after the meeting concluded. "She's remarkable. Reminds me of my granddaughter." Jack felt a surge of pride watching Lucy charm his colleagues with her genuine curiosity about their work. She asked thoughtful questions about investments and listened with the same serious attention she gave her bottle cap arrangements. Later, while organizing his desk drawer, Jack discovered something that stopped his heart: the red bottle cap. Lucy had given him the day of the accident, now tarnished and worn from being carried in his pocket for months. "Lucy," he called softly. She looked up from her drawing at the small conference table. "I have something that belongs to you." Her eyes widened when she saw the familiar red cap. "My lucky bottle cap. I thought I'd never see it again." "You gave it to me for luck, remember? And it worked. It brought me to you." Jack had the bottle cap professionally mounted on a keychain, presenting it to Lucy that evening at dinner. Her reaction was everything he'd hoped for and more. She clutched it to her chest with tears in her eyes. "Now we both have luck," she whispered. Their relationship deepened through shared experiences that might have seemed ordinary to others but felt magical to them both. They developed inside jokes about Mrs. Rivera's tendency to overseason everything, created elaborate backstories for the people they observed from their high windows, and established rituals that belonged uniquely to them. But it was Lucy's difficult day at school that truly cemented their bond. She came home unusually quiet, her typical chatter replaced by thoughtful silence. At dinner, she picked at Mrs. Rivera's carefully prepared meal, lost in thought. "Want to talk about it?" Jack asked gently. The kids at school were talking about their spring break trips: skiing in Aspen, beaches in Hawaii, castles in Europe. Lucy's voice was small. "When they asked about mine, I said we didn't go anywhere because my grandma had just died. They got all weird and quiet, like I'd said something wrong." Jack felt a familiar surge of protectiveness, but he forced himself to listen instead of immediately trying to fix her pain. Then Madison, she's usually nice, said maybe next year my new family would take me somewhere good. Like I was some kind of charity case who got lucky. Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "They don't understand that you're not new. You're my real daddy, and we're a real family, even if it's different." Jack moved around the table to kneel beside her chair. "Lucy, I want to tell you about when I was your age." Her tears paused, curiosity overriding hurt. "I lived with my grandmother too for a while. My parents traveled constantly for work, and I felt different from the other kids who had normal families. I was angry and ashamed, thinking I wasn't good enough. But you're successful now. You have this beautiful home and everyone respects you. Success isn't about impressing people who don't understand your story," Jack said softly. "It's about knowing who you are and being proud of it. You saved a stranger's life when you were 7 years old. You handled losing your grandmother with more grace than most adults could manage. You adapted to a completely new life without losing your kindness or courage. Those kids can't even imagine being that strong." Lucy considered this, absently rubbing her lucky bottle cap keychain. "Will you help me write a letter to my teacher? I want to do a presentation about Grandma for show and tell, about how she taught me to be brave and kind, and how that's more important than fancy vacations. I would be honored to help you with that." As they worked on the presentation together that evening, Jack realized that Lucy was teaching him just as much as he was teaching her. Through her eyes, he was rediscovering what truly mattered. Not the size of his bank account or the view from his office, but the courage to love completely and the wisdom to find strength in vulnerability. The final DNA test results arrived the next week, officially confirming what their hearts already knew. Jack framed the document not as proof of their relationship, but as a symbol of the legal system finally catching up to an emotional truth that had been evident from the moment they'd met. The idea struck Jack during one of Lucy's bedtime reflections, when she wondered aloud why some children didn't have enough food, while others complained about having too many toys. Her simple question, couldn't the kids with too much just share with the kids who don't have enough, planted a seed that would grow into something transformative. What if we could actually do that? Jack asked her the next morning over breakfast. Lucy looked up from her cereal, intrigued. Do what? Share. Create a way to help children who don't have what they need. Jack pulled out a legal pad, sketching ideas as he spoke. We could call it the Carter Miller Foundation. After Grandma and us? Lucy's eyes lit up with understanding. After the three most important people in my life, Jack confirmed, adding Mabel's name prominently to his notes. Within weeks, the foundation took shape with Lucy as its most passionate advocate. She insisted on including art supplies in every care package, explaining to the foundation's board of directors, with the seriousness of a seasoned philanthropist, that creativity was just as important as food and clothing. Art helps you feel better when you're sad, she told the intimidating group of lawyers and businessmen, and it helps you dream about better things when everything seems bad. The board, initially skeptical of including a 7-year-old in their planning sessions, found themselves charmed by Lucy's practical wisdom and unwavering moral compass. Their first major project was renovating the Sunshine Children's Shelter on Chicago's South Side. Jack had expected to write a check and attend a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Instead, Lucy insisted they visit first to understand what the children actually needed. Hello, Lucy said simply to the group of wary children gathered in the shelter's threadbare common room. While Jack talked with the administrators, she sat, cross-legged on the floor, and began arranging her bottle caps in familiar patterns. Within minutes, she was surrounded by curious faces. "What are those?" asked a boy about Lucy's age, his clothes too small and his eyes too old. "Treasure maps," Lucy explained. "Each one tells a story about where you've been and where you might go. Can we make some? That's why I brought extras." Lucy pulled out a bag of bottle caps she'd been collecting specifically for this purpose. Everyone gets to pick their favorites and create their own map. Jack watched from across the room as Lucy worked her magic, teaching the children not just a craft but a way to find beauty and possibility in discarded things. She listened to their stories without judgment, helped settle disputes over particularly coveted caps, and somehow made each child feel special and heard. "She's remarkable," said Ms. Patricia Gonzalez, the shelter director. "Most adult volunteers come here feeling sorry for our kids. Your daughter sees them as equals." "She knows what it's like to have her world change overnight," Jack replied, his throat tight with pride. When the renovation began 3 months later, Lucy was involved in every decision. She insisted on bright colors instead of institutional beige, reading nooks instead of sterile study areas, and a dedicated art room with supplies that would never run out. "Every child should have a place where they can make something beautiful," she declared during a planning meeting, sketching her vision with the same careful attention she gave her bottle cap arrangements. The transformation was remarkable. The once dreary shelter became a warm, welcoming space where children could heal and hope. Lucy donated half of her bottle cap collection to stock the art room, carefully selecting pieces that held special meaning. "This blue one was the first, one I found after Daddy saved me from the accident," she explained to Marcus, who was documenting the donation for the foundation's records. "And this green one was Grandma's favorite because it reminded her of spring." "Are you sure you want to give them away?" Marcus asked gently. "They're not going away," Lucy said with conviction. "They're going to help other kids make their own treasure maps. That's what Grandma would want." The official opening of the renovated shelter drew media attention that Jack carefully managed to protect Lucy's privacy while highlighting her vision. But it was the private moments that mattered most. Watching Lucy teach a shy 6-year-old how to sort bottle caps by color, seeing her comfort a teenager who'd aged out of foster care, observing her natural ability to connect with children from all backgrounds. "Why do you think helping other kids is so important?" Jack asked her one evening as they reviewed foundation applications. Lucy considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. "When Grandma was sick, I felt really alone, even though she was still there. And when she died, I felt like the whole world had forgotten about me. But then you came and Mrs. Rivera, and suddenly I wasn't alone anymore." She looked up from the grant application she'd been reviewing, a request from a group home in Milwaukee. "These kids feel alone too. Maybe if we help them, they'll remember that somebody cares about them even when everything seems scary." Jack realized that Lucy had articulated something he'd spent years in business school trying to understand, that true success wasn't measured in profit margins, but in the number of lives you touched and improved. The foundation expanded rapidly, funding art programs in 12 shelters across the Midwest within its first year. Lucy insisted on visiting each one, creating her bottle cap treasure maps with hundreds of children and leaving behind not just supplies, but hope. "She's changing how we think about child welfare," noted Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a social work professor, who began studying the foundation's impact. Traditional approaches focus on meeting basic needs: food, shelter, safety. Lucy's initiatives address something deeper: the need for dignity, creativity, and connection. Jack found himself changing too, his perspective on wealth and responsibility fundamentally altered by his daughter's example. Deals that once seemed crucial now paled in comparison to the joy on a child's face when they completed their first piece of art. Board meetings felt trivial next to the foundation planning sessions where Lucy's input carried as much weight as any MBA. "You know what the best part is?" Lucy told him one night as they organized photos from their latest shelter visit. "When kids make art, they stop being sad for a little while, and sometimes, if they make enough art, they remember how to be happy again." Jack studied a photo of Lucy sitting with a group of children, all of them concentrating intently on their bottle cap creations. In that moment, he understood that his daughter hadn't just saved his life in a car accident, she'd saved his soul, teaching him that true wealth came not from what you accumulated, but from what you gave away. The threat came from an unexpected source: Jack's past reaching into their carefully constructed present with vicious intent. Richard Blackwood, Jack's former business partner, had been released from federal prison after serving 18 months for embezzling company funds. Jack had been the one to discover the fraud and testify against him, ending both their partnership and Richard's career. Marcus delivered the disturbing news during what should have been a routine morning briefing. "The police investigation into your car accident has been reopened. They found evidence of mechanical tampering." Jack's blood ran cold. "What kind of tampering?" "Brake lines partially severed, designed to fail under stress. The investigators believe it was revenge for your testimony that sent Richard to prison." The realization hit Jack like a physical blow. Richard hadn't just tried to kill him. He'd inadvertently created the circumstances that brought Lucy into his life. The cosmic irony would have been laughable if it weren't so terrifying. "There's more," Marcus continued grimly. "Richard has been making inquiries about Lucy. He knows about the adoption, the foundation, everything." The phone rang that evening, while Jack was helping Lucy with homework. The voice on the other end was coldly familiar. "Hello, Jack. Prison food really gives you time to think about justice." Jack moved quickly to the kitchen, away from Lucy's innocent presence. "Richard, what do you want?" "What you took from me. My reputation, my freedom, my future." Richard's laugh was bitter. "But I've discovered you have something much more precious now. A little girl who depends on you completely. If you go anywhere." "Near Lucy, relax, I'm not a monster, but I am a desperate man with nothing left to lose. Unless you want social services to receive detailed allegations about your fitness as a father, you'll transfer $5 million to the account I'm about to give you." The line went dead, leaving Jack shaking with rage and fear. Within hours, Marcus had contacted both the FBI and Jack's security team, but the damage was already done. Richard had filed false reports alleging Jack's neglect and inappropriate behavior toward Lucy. While the claims were baseless, they triggered mandatory investigations that threw their lives into chaos. Lucy sensed the change immediately. "Why are there men in suits asking Mrs. Rivera questions?" she asked that evening, her bottle cap keychain clutched tightly in her small fist. Jack knelt beside her, choosing honesty over false reassurance. "Someone is trying to cause trouble for our family, but we're going to be okay because we have the truth on our side." "Is it because of me? Because I'm different from other kids?" "No, sweetheart. It's because of me. Something that happened before I knew you existed. But nothing will separate us. I promise." The nightmares returned that night, and Jack found himself once again sitting outside Lucy's door, listening to her frightened whimpers and feeling powerless to shield her from adult cruelties she shouldn't have to understand. The breakthrough came when Marcus's investigation uncovered Richard's full plan, including recorded conversations where he admitted to the car tampering and his current extortion scheme. The FBI arrested him at his motel, ending the threat but leaving emotional scars that would take time to heal. "Is the bad man gone forever?" Lucy asked, after Jack explained that Richard could no longer hurt them. "Forever," Jack confirmed, holding her close and marveling at her resilience. Even in the face of adult evil, she remained fundamentally hopeful, trusting that goodness would ultimately prevail. "Good," she said simply, "because we have too much important work to do to waste time being scared." 6 months after Richard's arrest and the finalization of Lucy's adoption, their story began attracting attention beyond Chicago's philanthropic circles. What started as a local human interest piece, "Local Businessman's Daughter Inspires Citywide Charity Initiative," snowballed into national coverage when a prominent child welfare advocate shared Lucy's foundation work on social media. "Daddy, why do all these people want to talk to us?" Lucy asked, staring at the stack of interview requests Marcus had carefully filtered and declined. "Because your story gives people hope," Jack explained, though he was fiercely protective of Lucy's privacy. "When people hear about a little girl who saved a stranger and then used her new life to help other children, it reminds them that good things can happen." Jack had agreed to one carefully controlled interview with a respected family magazine, with strict conditions about Lucy's participation. She would answer only questions she felt comfortable with. No photographers would enter their home, and her foundation work would be the primary focus rather than the dramatic circumstances that brought them together. The journalist, Sarah Chen, arrived expecting a typical feel-good story, but left profoundly moved by Lucy's genuine compassion and articulate wisdom. "Most 7-year-olds I interview give one-word answers," Sarah told Jack privately. "Lucy speaks like someone who's lived 3 lifetimes. She's remarkable." The article, titled "The Bottle Cap Philanthropist," captured Lucy's essence without exploiting her story. It featured her artwork, her foundation philosophy, and her practical approach to helping others. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of letters from children wanting to start their own bottle cap collections, donations pouring into the foundation, and requests from shelters across the country asking for help implementing Lucy's programs. "Look at this one," Lucy said, carefully reading a letter from a 10-year-old in California who'd started collecting bottle caps to create treasure maps for kids in her neighborhood. "She says my story made her feel brave enough to help others." Jack watched his daughter process this responsibility with the same thoughtful consideration she gave everything else. Rather than being overwhelmed by the attention, she seemed energized by the possibility of expanding their impact. The foundation's annual fundraising gala had originally been planned as a modest Chicago event, but with national interest in Lucy's work, it evolved into something much larger. Jack insisted on keeping the focus on the children they served rather than on their personal story, but he knew Lucy deserved recognition for her vision and leadership. "I've never been to a fancy party before," Lucy admitted the evening of the gala, standing before her bedroom mirror in a royal blue dress that matched her confident personality. "What if I say something wrong?" "Sweetheart, you've spoken to groups of adults at foundation meetings, comforted frightened children at shelters, and charmed some of the toughest businessmen in Chicago. You'll be perfect. But those were just conversations. This is different." Jack knelt beside her, straightening the small gold pendant, Mabel's cross, that she always wore for important occasions. "Do you remember what Grandma used to tell you about being nervous? She said butterflies in your stomach just mean something matters to you," Lucy recited, her voice growing steadier. "And what did she say to do with those butterflies? Use them to fly higher than you thought you could." The grand ballroom of the Palmer House Hotel had been transformed into a showcase for the children's artwork from all 12 foundation-supported shelters. Lucy had insisted that every piece be displayed prominently, creating a gallery that told stories of hope, resilience, and creativity flourishing despite difficult circumstances. As guests arrived, a mixture of Chicago's elite, social workers, shelter administrators, and some of the older children from their programs, Lucy moved through the crowd with natural grace. She remembered names, asked thoughtful questions, and somehow made everyone feel like the most important person in the room. "Lucy, can you tell us about this painting?" asked Margaret Hoffman, one of Chicago's most prominent philanthropists, stopping before a vibrant piece created by a 6-year-old from the Sunshine Shelter. "That's by Maria. She told me this is what happiness looks like, all the colors mixed together but still beautiful. She made it after she learned that her foster family wants to adopt her." Lucy's explanation was simple but profound, capturing both the child's joy and the deeper meaning of art as expression. The formal program began with Jack addressing the crowd, but it was Lucy's brief speech that left the audience spellbound. "When I was little, well, littler than I am now," she began, earning gentle laughter, "my grandma taught me that everyone has something beautiful inside them, but sometimes it gets buried under sad or scary things." She paused, scanning the audience, with the same serious attention she gave her bottle cap arrangements. "The kids we help aren't different from anyone else. They just need someone to help them remember how to find their beautiful things again. Art helps with that. So does knowing that somebody cares about you." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "My daddy and I are lucky because we found each other when we both needed families. But lots of kids are still looking for their families, or their safe places, or just someone to believe in them. That's why our foundation matters." The applause was thunderous, but Lucy wasn't finished. "If you want to help, you don't have to give money, though that's nice too," she added with a smile that made adults chuckle. "You can collect bottle caps for treasure maps, or visit kids who feel lonely, or just remember that every person has something beautiful inside them, even when it's hard to see." As she concluded, Lucy pulled out her lucky red bottle cap keychain, holding it up so everyone could see. "This little thing saved my daddy's life and brought us together. Sometimes the smallest things can make the biggest difference." The standing ovation lasted several minutes, but Jack noticed that many guests were wiping away tears. Later, as they worked the room together, he overheard conversations that proved Lucy's impact extended far beyond fundraising. "That child made me reconsider our company's entire charitable giving strategy," confided Thomas Wright, CEO of a major corporation. "I'm calling 3 shelters tomorrow to volunteer," said another guest. "If a 7-year-old can make this kind of difference, surely I can contribute something." The evening raised over $2 million for the foundation, but more importantly, it established Lucy as a genuine advocate for child welfare, rather than merely a sympathetic figure. Media coverage focused on her articulate vision and practical solutions, rather than the dramatic story of their reunion. "You were magnificent tonight," Jack told Lucy as they rode home, still wearing their formal attire but both exhausted from the emotional intensity of the evening. "Did we help the kids?" she asked, settling against his shoulder in the backseat of their car. "We helped them tremendously, and you inspired a lot of adults to think differently about what children can accomplish when they're given the chance." "Good, because Grandma always said that if you have the power to make things better, you have the responsibility to try." Jack smiled, recognizing Mabel's wisdom in Lucy's words. As they pulled into their building's garage, he marveled at how this small girl had not only transformed his understanding of family and purpose, but was now influencing an entire community to reconsider their responsibilities to society's most vulnerable children. The foundation's phones rang constantly over the following weeks, with offers of support, partnership requests, and most touchingly, calls from children who wanted to start their own helping projects. Lucy insisted on personally responding to as many as possible, dictating letters that Mrs. Rivera would type and helping to coordinate bottle cap collection drives across the country. "Are you happy with how everything turned out?" Jack asked, her one evening as they framed the official adoption certificate alongside one of her early drawings of their first meeting. Lucy studied both images thoughtfully. "I'm sad that Grandma isn't here to see it, but I think she would be proud. We're taking care of each other and we're helping other kids feel less alone. That's what she would want." As they hung the frames side by side in their living room, Jack realized that Lucy had given him something more valuable than he'd ever imagined possible. Not just a daughter, but a purpose that extended far beyond personal success to encompass genuine service to others. 1 year to the day after the accident that changed everything, Lucy stood before her bedroom mirror, preparing for her first day at Pemberton Academy, one of Chicago's most prestigious private schools. The 8-year-old girl adjusting her new uniform bore little resemblance to the 7-year-old who had knelt beside a roadside jam stand, yet her essential spirit remained unchanged. "Nervous?" Jack asked, appearing in her doorway with 2 cups of hot chocolate, a tradition they'd established for important mornings. "A little," Lucy admitted, accepting the warm mug gratefully. "What if the kids think I'm weird because of all the newspaper stories? Then they don't deserve to be your friends." Jack sat on her bed watching as she made final adjustments to her appearance. "But I have a feeling you'll find your people. You always do." Lucy moved to her dresser, where her remaining bottle cap collection was arranged in a new pattern, a perfect heart shape with Mabel's photograph placed carefully in the center. The design had taken her weeks to perfect, each cap positioned with the same meticulous care she'd shown as a 7-year-old, but now with the added wisdom of everything she'd experienced. "I used to think the bottle caps were magic," she said, touching one gently. "But I figured out that the magic was never in the caps themselves." Where was it then? In believing that something good was coming, even when everything seemed broken. Lucy picked up her backpack, heavy with new school supplies and carefully organized according to her color-coded system. "Grandma taught me that hope is the most important thing you can carry with you." They rode to school in comfortable silence, both lost in reflection about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The accident that could have been a tragedy had instead become the first chapter of a love story, not just between a father and daughter, but between their small family and the hundreds of children whose lives they'd touched through the foundation. Pemberton Academy's imposing brick facade might have intimidated another child, but Lucy surveyed it with the same practical assessment she brought to everything else. Students in identical uniforms clustered in small groups, their conversations creating a buzz of nervous energy that marked the beginning of any school year. "Remember," Jack said as they approached the entrance, "you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Just be yourself." "I know." Lucy paused at the school's threshold, her hand unconsciously reaching for the red bottle cap keychain that never left her side. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart?" "Will you be here when school ends?" I know it's silly, but the question revealed the one vulnerability Lucy rarely showed, the deep-seated fear that the people she loved might disappear without warning, as Mabel had. Jack knelt to her level, taking her small hands in his larger ones. "Lucy Carter Miller, I will be here every day when school ends, for as long as you need me to be. I promise you that on everything that matters to me, on Grandma's memory, on our foundation, on the love that brought us together. Even when I'm grown up. Especially when you're grown up, that's what daddies do. We stay." Lucy's smile transformed her face, banishing the last traces of uncertainty. "Okay then, I'm ready." As she walked through the school's entrance, her confident stride drawing curious glances from other students, Jack reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought them here. 12 months ago, he'd been a successful but emotionally isolated businessman whose life revolved around profit margins and quarterly reports. Today, he was a father whose greatest achievement wasn't measured in dollars but in the courage of the little girl disappearing into her new school. His phone buzzed, with a text from Marcus. "Foundation board meeting moved to 2 p.m. 3 new shelter applications need review. Jack smiled, typing back, "Perfect. Lucy will want to evaluate the art program proposals when she gets home." The Carter Miller Foundation had evolved far beyond their original vision. With Lucy's input, they had expanded to support art therapy. Programs in 23 states trained over 200 volunteers in Lucy's bottle cap treasure map technique and helped establish creative spaces and facilities serving more than 5,000 children. But the numbers, impressive as they were, didn't capture the real impact. The shy children who'd found their voices through art, the teenagers who'd discovered hope through creativity, the families reunified through programs that addressed emotional healing alongside basic needs. Lucy had become something unprecedented in the philanthropic world, a child advocate whose ideas were taken seriously by adults, whose vision shaped policy decisions, and whose personal story inspired systemic change. University researchers studied her programs, child welfare experts sought her input, and most remarkably, children across the country had begun organizing their own helping initiatives inspired by her example. That evening, Lucy burst through their apartment door with the enthusiastic energy of someone who'd conquered new territory. "Tell me everything," Jack demanded, sweeping her into a hug that lifted her feet off the ground. "Mrs. Patterson, she's my teacher, asked if I was the Lucy from the newspapers, and I said yes, but that I hoped we could talk about normal 8-year-old things too. And then Tommy Chin said his mom read the article about our foundation and asked if I could teach him to make bottle cap maps for his little sister, who's scared of starting kindergarten." Lucy's words tumbled out in an excited rush as she kicked off her school shoes and began her afternoon routine of checking on her remaining bottle cap collection. And Sarah Williams, she sits next to me in math, said her grandmother collects bottle caps too, but she just keeps them in a jar. I told her about treasure maps and she wants to learn. Oh, and the librarian, Mr. Rodriguez, asked if I'd like to start an art club where kids can work on projects to donate to shelters. Jack listened with the contentment of someone whose world had found its proper order. Lucy's ability to find connection and purpose wherever she went no longer surprised him, but it continued to fill him with wonder. As they worked together on foundation applications that evening, Lucy carefully reviewing requests from children's programs while Jack handled the financial details, he marveled at how completely their lives had intertwined. They functioned as true partners now, each bringing unique strengths to their shared mission of helping children find beauty and hope in difficult circumstances. "This one's from a school in Denver," Lucy announced, holding up an application decorated with children's drawings. They want to start a bottle cap program for kids whose parents are deployed overseas. Military families move a lot, so the kids could take their treasure maps with them to remember that they belong somewhere. What do you think? Lucy studied the application with the same serious consideration she'd once reserved for arranging her collection by color. "I think kids who have to say goodbye to their parents for long times need extra magic to carry with them. We should definitely help them." As bedtime approached, Lucy completed her nightly ritual of arranging her bottle caps in their heart pattern around Mabel's photograph. The routine had evolved over the months, becoming less about seeking comfort and more about honoring memory while embracing the future. "Grandma would be amazed by everything we've accomplished," she said softly, touching the frame that held her grandmother's smiling image. "She'd be proud, but not amazed," Jack corrected gently. "She always knew you were capable of changing the world. She just prepared you for it." Lucy nodded, then surprised him by producing a small wrapped package from her school bag. "I made this for you in art class today. It's for our anniversary." Inside was a small painting showing two figures standing beside a burning car, but instead of depicting the accident's trauma, Lucy had transformed it into something beautiful. Golden light surrounded the figures, and the flames had become shooting stars carrying them toward a bright future filled with other small figures, the children they'd helped together. "It's the moment everything began," she explained. "When we saved each other." Jack's eyes filled with tears as he studied the painting, understanding that Lucy had captured something profound about their relationship. They hadn't just found each other, they'd rescued each other from lives that, while comfortable, had been incomplete. "Thank you," he whispered, knowing the painting would join their growing collection of artwork that chronicled their journey together. As Lucy settled into bed, clutching the lucky keychain that had brought them together, Jack sat in his familiar spot outside her door, not because she needed comfort anymore, but because these quiet moments of watching over her had become precious to him. Through her partially open door, he could see Lucy arranging tomorrow's school clothes with the same methodical care she brought to everything else. At 8 years old, she possessed a remarkable combination of childlike wonder and mature wisdom, able to find joy in simple pleasures while carrying the weight of helping other children find their own paths to happiness. The future stretched ahead of them, filled with school programs to attend, foundation work to expand, and the ordinary, extraordinary moments of a father and daughter building a life together. Lucy would grow up, pursue her own dreams, and eventually create a family of her own. But the bond forged in those crucial months after the accident would remain unbreakable. As Jack finally headed to his own room, he paused at the living room wall where their framed adoption certificate hung beside Lucy's first drawing of their meeting. The legal document and the childish artwork represented the same truth, that families aren't always born. Sometimes they're chosen, rescued, and built one day at a time through love, patience, and the courage to believe that even the most unexpected beginnings can lead to beautiful endings. The brave little girl who'd saved a stranger's life had indeed led them both to something magical, just as her bottle-cap treasure maps had always promised she would.